Okay, Zok the Helig Gemara. We are on top Vav Amud Aleph. We're 4 lines from the top, and we're learning about the different types of rain and when they occur. Tanu Rabban, Yoira. Yoira is one of the rains. It's generally the earlier rains. Shemoyer es abrios latiach gagoysein ulahachnes es perisein v'lasos kol tzorchei. The first rain in the season is the best marketing tool for Chaim Tzvi. People know that the rainy season is beginning, so people have to prepare themselves for the winter. So if they have any leaks in their roof, they got to reseal them. If they have pears drying in the fields, they got to bring them in. It's like what we do in the fall. We take our barbecues in, and our bicycle in, and our lawn tools in. We take everything into the shed because we don't want to leave it out in the snow. Dover acher, another pshat in where the word yoira comes from. So the first is Meir. It teaches, it shows, it guides. The second pshat is shemirava es haaretz. It's a lotion of quenching. It quenches the thirst of the land. Umashke ad hahoin, and it irrigates and it quenches and waters, lubricates till the time. The Nemar, like it says in the Pessel, Telamea Rave. If the rows are nice and saturated with water, Nachas Kedudel, then the armies of Klal Yisrael will be very happy because their payers will grow. And if there's rain that's going to improve the soil, Simcha Tevarech, things will grow very nicely. So the Lashon Yoira is from Rava, from satisfy, from quench. A third approach to what the word Yoira means is Sheyorid Benachas. The first rains rain gently. The Eina Yorid Bezah, and they don't rain with a tremendous power. So all of these 3 pshatim are learning Yoira is like a siman bracha. It's a very good thing. Break the Gemara. Oy Eina Yoira. Ella, maybe it's wild, rough rain. Shemeshers a pears, it uproots the pears. Umashtif as royim, and washes away the seeds. Umashtif as elanis, and maybe even wash away the trees. Maybe Yoira is bad. Havloyer Malkosh, it says, so the Torah puts Yoira and Malkosh together. And we say that just like we know Malkosh, Malkosh lebracha, just like we know Malkosh is always lebracha, Av Yoira will be lebracha. Why is there an assumption that Malkosh is lebracha, which is the later rains? So if you look at Rashi, a little bit lower on the Omid, to the right, which is Malkosh lebracha, she'i efshir l'darshai l'shaber granois u'lahasir peyosh. You cannot possibly learn that the rains of Malkosh, which are very late, are going to be doing damage. You know why? Your fruits are not outside at the time where the Malkosh comes. So therefore, it cannot be a siman klala. The only way you can darshan Malkosh is that it's good rain. What does it accomplish? It rains on the stalks and on the raw kernels that make them puffed. Makes them more puffed, meaning it's for sure only positive. Then the Gemara says, maybe not. Maybe Malkush means it's very powerful, that it'll crush houses with its strength. And it breaks trees. Those are things that are still exposed to the elements during that period of time. And it brings in the insects that eat up things. Zok to Gemara, Talmud Loimer Yoira. Malkush is compared to Yoira, and now it's the Yoira that we're going to use to illustrate that it's a bracha. My Yoira lebracha, af Malkush lebracha. The Yoira gufei minolam. We just did an about face. We just assumed that Yoira needed support from Malkush to show that it's lebracha. Now you want to say Yoira is the guiding light of this pasuk, and Yoira is telling us that it's lebracha. Minolam. How do you know that? The children of Tzion, Gilu, V'simchu, B'Hashem, L'Keichem. We should celebrate with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ki Nazan Lachem, There's a Meir l'tzedakah. He gave you the Meir l'tzedakah. Clearly, this rain of Meir, the early rain, is l'tzedakah. Yored lechem geshem. Meir u'malkosh perisha. You love geshem of Meir and malkosh perisha. So you clearly see that Meir is in context with positive, with bracha, and therefore Yored will prove that malkosh is bracha.
I don't understand. Yes, yeah, I don't get it. This is part of the brach when the statim tartzachim beite underwear. Vayim shmaya tishmel mitzvah, right? How can you have a havamina that it's not for a bracha?
Oh,
the stati esim satcha v'yachad svat v'sham lechem peiftem, right? I understand how you can even think that it's not a bracha.
That's a very good kasha. The Olam asked that kasha.
They better, because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
That's right. That's right. So one of the kasha is going to be better than any of the terutzim that I heard. But one of the terutzim that I heard was Hayim Shemoya is saying if you listen, it's going to be good. If you don't listen, it's not going to be good. So
right.
it could be it's on the other side. But if not, then if you do listen, then it'll be but if not, it might be Yoyer Malchus, which is very not the postures of how you read a pasuk.
Right, not at all.
The kasha is definitely a good kasha. How could we be bringing a pasuk that clearly is talking about the milas of the rain that Hashem is giving us when we're doing the mitzvahs, and we want to touch it as possibly being a klala.
Right, because the klala starts, he shamro lechem pen yiftem levatchem b'satam ba'avadtem. Right?
Right. So the story doesn't introduce that part until later.
Right. So
you need to write another book. It's simply not pshat.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but that is definitely what one of the.
That's in my first book already. I say this is the simply pshat, and this is the simply not pshat.
Chaim, do you ever get at the beginning of the winter when things start to rain? Do you get more calls about all the people who discover the leaks in their roof, or by you, there's no special time in the year where people call more?
Yeah, before the winter, there's a bit of a rush because of winter. There's still that idea that like farmers, that we have to prepare for the winter.
So the Gemara, we just looked at the Gemara that one of the definitions of Yoira is it points people that they got to start preparing their roofs and fixing their roofs to cover the winter for the rainy season.
Because it doesn't rain in the summer in Eretz Yisrael.
Because the Gemara wants to suggest that Yoira or Malkosh might not be good. And the Gemara brings a raya either from Malkosh to Yoira. Just like Malkosh is good, Yoira is good, and vice versa. The problem is the pasuk that we're discussing is in Prishma, where we say, right? In that context, both Yoira and Malkosh are both good. We're talking about Shmuel Ishmael. The pasuk is talking about if you listen to me, you're going to have Yoira Malkosh. If not, you're going to have trouble. So how could you learn the Yoira Malkosh? Meaning that's right. No, so these are all nice talking, but at the end of the day, it does say, on a good note, Yoyer Malkosh. So that's any way you look at it, at the end of the day, that's how it's mashma. I'm sorry? We're on Vav Amar Al, that's right. Let me just see if he says anything about it. I don't see it. Oh, here it is. Oh, he does bring down it. I didn't look at it before. Oh, so Rashi Shalfisa. Oh, wait, I can't believe I didn't notice it in Rashi. So let's look at Rashi first. Let's see Rashi first. Here it is. Oh, yeah, no, says right. Let's look at Rashi. Claiming that hashtamina on Yoyer Levracha. Oh, you ain't ela Yoyer Loshen Klola. Come on, Yoyer Sheshover Koil. Loshen Chetza Yoyer. Vachimash Makra. So here, so David, it's actually a Rashi. Vachimash Makra. V'haya im Shemoya Tishmuel Mitzvaysai. V'im Lav Nesati Mitar Aitzachem Yoyre Lera. Milsa Ba'alma. So that I told you that it's going on to Vim Lav is Lera. Unless what Rashi means is that not how you read the pasuk. You read the pasuk is good. Everything will be good. But and on the Penyitel of Avraham, it will reverse all of those previous things that were lebracha and make them into a klal. Maybe that's what it means. Let's see if he explains Rashi that way. Oh no, he doesn't say that. He says it's actually in the actual pasuk. It says is bad. Right? Even though it's a doich say, like I think said, it's simply not pshat. So derech habrayso lefarish tvareh the litchais gam perushim shenim mistapim. So Rashi says you're right. It's not the pashto way to read it that way, and l'maisa we're not really seriously entertaining the idea that yoyer malchus should be bad, but the Rashi is going through the steps to prove, regardless, that both yoyer and malchus are good. Okay, very good. You read that to my show as well. Okay, so they do talk about it. Let's see the Halakha Gemara Bite. When do the rains of Yoyre come? They come in Cheshvan. Umalkosh, when do the rains of Malkosh come? Benisan, they come in Nisan. Like we said earlier, after the Tvu is completely ready to go, that Malkosh makes it puff. Maybe Yoyre is in Tishrei, which is even earlier. Malkosh be'ir, and Malkosh is later in the year. Tabat Leimar be'itay. So Yoyre, the Gemara had three pshat. One is that it trains people to take care of their roofs, or it's merava esaretz. It's satisfied. It quenches the earth. And the Malkosh, I don't know the type of Malkosh. I don't know the type of Malkosh yet. Oh, Rashi says here, if it's derech kalala, it means it's mal, it cuts and it breaks. But if it means good, let's see if Rashi is a pshat. If it means good, let me see if Rashi is a pshat. In the word malkosh, if it means good. Let me see if I can see it here. No, he doesn't have a touch in the word. Oh yeah. Mamale is a tfua bekasheha. So malkosh, it puffs up the tfua once it's ready. So it's a lotion of good. So either mamale hakashin or it's mal hakashin. So one is good, one is bad.
Some kind of a rain that does this.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So the question is, when do these rains come? So maybe the malkosh comes later, and even though that's a little bit late for the season, maybe that's also called malkosh. So the normal proper time for these rains are earlier. So Rashi's be'itai, the second wide line. Yoyer b'marcheshvan is the best time for it. Umalkush b'nisan. Shekach ya'es v'azman. That's really the best time. The yafahu kidalakamon zman revir rishayna marcheshvan. The time for the first sets of rains, the best time for that is in Cheshvan. Okay, so let's see the Gemara by Malkosh. What does Malkosh mean? Amar Rav Nehiloi bar Idi Amar Shmuel. Davar Shemol Kisher Shisrael. Oh, another pshat. It's mal. It cuts out the toughness of Klal Yisrael. Meaning, if we see we're not getting that rain, we start to sweat. So it cuts us down to size and makes us be b'teach and Rebbeinu Shalom and daven to Rebbeinu Shalom, because if that rain, everything could be going wonderful for us, and we can say till the rain stops, and then everything stops, right? It's like what you told me the day the day that turned he came down on your car, all the Disney magic evaporated. Zog to Gemara weiter. The very Rabbi Shmuel taught. The very Rabbi Shmuel said, "Davar shemamale tfua b'kashel." It's rain that when the tfua is complete, it puffs it up because that rain gives it more mass. And with Misatana in the Brisa we learned, it's davar sheyorid al hamalilois v'alakash. It's rain that rains on the malilois, which are the raw kernels, alakashin, and on the straw. Tanu Rabbanan, yored b'malkosh, yored b'marcheshvan. The early rains come in Marcheshvan, u'malkosh b'nisan, and the later rains, the malkosh, come in Nisan. Ata imer yored b'marcheshvan, oy eino ela b'chodesh Kislev. Maybe the beginning rains don't come till Kislev. Hamad be'itai yoyra u'malkosh. Ma malkosh be'itai, just like malkosh comes at the good time, the best time. If yoyra be'itai, which would be in Cheshvan. Tanya idach, we looked at another brisa. Yoyra b'marcheshvan u'malkosh b'nisan divrei Meir. So that's the first shita. The Chachamim yoyra is b'Kislev. He makes yoyra a little bit later. Man Chachamim, who are the Chachamim who say the yoyra a little later? Rabbi Yosy, it is Rabbi Yosy. The Tanya we learned. Ezehu Revir Rishayna. What is the first set of rains? HaBechira B'Shloisha B'Marcheshvan. The first of the set of the three rains generally come on the third day of Cheshvan. Beinis, the intermediate rains, come B'Shiva B'Ay on the seventh day, which is 4 days later. Afela, the late rains B'Shiva Asher B'Ay on the 17th day. So first there's a gap from 1 to 2, there's a gap of 4. From 2 to 3, there's a gap of 10. Divrei Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Meir, B'Shiva, on the 7th day of Cheshvan is the first, Uv'Yud Zayin. So now we have a gap of 10. U'Be'eshem Shloisha, and now we have a gap of 6. Rabbi Yosy Omer, Rabbi Yosy says the gaps are all equal. B'Yud Zayin on 17th of Cheshvan, U'Be'eshem Shloisha, so that's 6 days. U'B'Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which is another 6 days. So he held that there was exactly the same amount of time in between rain 1 and rain 2, as well as rain 2 and rain 3. That's going to be very significant in just a moment. The Brisa quotes the Chachamim as saying halacha. We want to see if we can identify who that person is.
It's not Chachamim, it's not everybody, it's one man.
So whenever the Brisa refers to somebody with the word Chachamim, it's because Rebbe wants to pascal like. So it calls him B'Loshen Rabbim to say that that's who we pascal.
Yosy.
How does that make sense?
Hello.
1 second, Davi. She's in the middle of
How
asking.
does that make sense? Because you want, he's a yochid, he's not a rabbin.
But whenever the Tana, the Mishnah wants to pass like somebody, it's common for them to use the word Chachamim. And maybe they know that other people who held like it.
Right?
And we're going to see in just a minute. Davi, just go and tell the Chen Hayar Rabbi Yosy Omer, Eina Yechidim Esanin. Rabbi Yosy said the Yechidim didn't fast. In other words, we don't expect the rain to come, and we don't have to fast. We don't need the tzaddikim of the generation to fast. At Shigir Chodesh Kislev, Amar Chisda Halacha Rabbi Yosy. Right? You see, the Gemara is bringing it out. In Halacha like Rabbi Chisda, the Halacha is like him. Okay, I'm sorry, Davi, what were you saying?
No, just, I mean, they're saying which days it starts, the middle, whatever. I mean, every year was exact same time. I mean, I'm sure every year was a little different. No, if you go from year to year.
Well, the Gemara is going to actually tell us. There's probably some wiggle room, but the Gemara is going to tell us Lamai Nafkamina, what day these rains are scheduled to come, and we're going to see there it makes a Nafkamina for a couple of different halachas.
They're arguing about when it's supposed to come, not when it actually comes.
Well,
I'm sure every year it's different.
We're assuming it's going to come, or we're assuming it comes when it's supposed to come, because there's enough min halacha. It doesn't come, so it must be typically that they come on these specific days.
It's they're arguing mitzvahs. Every year you can look and say, okay, did it come this day or not? So how can you say how can they be arguing? Just check history.
I hear. So let's see how the Gemara makes this halacha l'maisa, and then we'll see how it works. But they can't control it exactly. So let's see. Zok to Gemara. Keman Azla. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped. A Meimar Masni Lahadir Pista Bahalish. A Meimar quoted Reb Chisda's halacha a little different, and he said as follows: on the third day of Cheshvan, we ask for rain. On the seventh day. So now, when he says the rain comes, he's talking about when the time is to daven for rain. You see that? You see that, David? So now it's a question of when we're supposed to
That
daven.
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Amar Abchista, halacha Rabbi Gamliel, that we start davening for rain on the 7th of Tishrei. So tomorrow, come on, all the Tanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Aimer, Yishamim Sheyardu. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said as follows. So I just want to remind everybody that as I learned the Brisa with the 3 shittas about when the rains come, I pointed out that according to 2 shittas, the gaps in between the rains was 3 days, 4 days, 10 days. But according to Rabbi Yosy, the gaps were all the same. 6 days in between the first and the second, and 6 days in between the second and the third. So Zok to Gemara, we have a brisa that says, if it rains for 7 days straight, you can count it as a 1 and 2 because it spanned 7 days, or shniu shlishis, or if it's in between the time of the second and the third, you can count it as the second and the third grade. Come on, who would this be consistent with Rabbi Yosy? Because it's only Rabbi Yosy who says that the difference in time between the first and the second and the third would be equally spanned by a rain of 7 days. So that's why this halacha is consistent with Rabbi Yosy. Amar Chista, halacha Rabbi Yosy, we pass them like Rabbi Yosy. Zok Gemara, when these rains are scheduled to come. Yishlama Revi Rishayna Lisha. I understand, like we just said earlier, the reason why we need to know when the normal time for the first rains to occur is that we know when to start davening. We say Talamot. Shalishis, it's very relevant for us to know when the third rain is supposed to arrive, because if the third rain, the time for the third rain comes and it hasn't rained yet, you start fasting. But Shnia Lamai, why do I need to know when the Revi Shnia is? Amar Abzeira, that would be a Nakwina L'Nadarim. It would be relevant for Hilchos Nadarim. And how would that manifest itself? If none we learned.
If you don't know when the second one is, who says the third one is the third one?
It could have just said that the second one is 14 days after the first one. What's to be enough in the second one? So tomorrow, what if someone says, a guy said, I will not eat chocolate cake until it rains. Or he said, I will not eat anything, I will not have anything ad hagashamim until it rains. So then the halach is he has to refrain from whatever he limited himself from. Why is that significant? Why is it the Revi Shnia? So Rashi says, because Nedarim, and the normal way of speech is they don't call it rain. The Lashon B'Yadam is the rainy season didn't start until the second rain comes. Why? Why is the second rain significant? Because that's when the roads get muddy. That's why people in general, when they talk, they refer to the rainy season as beginning when the roads start to get muddy. Okay? Rashi has a second shot that when they say the rainy season, they mean at least 2 rains, which would be the Revi Rishayna and the Revi Shnia. The reason why we need to know when the Revi Shnia is because we need to know at what point the Zaysim of Lekat Shikha and Peah are mutter to be taken by anybody. It's not to be learned. Really, those are left in individual fields for the Aniyim. When is it Hefker Lakol? When can we assume the Aniyim are no longer interested in it? When the elderly people walk on, well, actually, the Gemara will explain the Musha shortly. The parrot, when Aniyim already walk through the field once, and then they walk through it a second time, at that point, the Aniyim are Mesiach Das from it because they assume there's nothing left. The Zaysim, by Zaysim, it's Mishatered Revi Shnia, when the second time it rains, because by that time we assume, everybody will assume everything was taken, and therefore anyone would be Yayish. Zoktamar, my Nemushais, what are the Nemushais? Which is where the Lekat Shekha are released to the public. Rabbi Yochanan, it's Sabi the Asli Atigra. It's old people who go on sticks and they're looking down and they walk very slowly. When they go through the field, we assume there's nothing of value left, and therefore no anim are interested anymore. It means the elderly people who come with their children behind them. So there's two sets of eyes checking as they walk through the field. After that occurs, once again, everyone's miyach. There's a certain period of time in the summer where you're allowed to walk through people's fields because it's not going to do any damage. But eventually, as the rainy season progresses and people have already planted, for that season, you're no longer allowed to walk through people's fields because you're going to be stomping possibly on some of their things that need to grow. So up until that point, you could take Zaysim. After that, they're muti. So Amar Mar, Ma'alchim Kolodam B'Shvilei Rashus Ashetei Revi'ah Shniel. Anybody that's allowed to walk through these paths that go through private property until the Revi'ah Shniel. Now the question arises here is, what do we mean? All of these produce are in private people's fields. The owners have to leave them for Daniyim, but they're still in people's fields. So once all Daniyim are miyayish from them, shouldn't the owner automatically be koined with Kinyan Chatzar? So that's what many people ask. So Reb Chaim asked this question to his father, to the Steifer, and the Steifer told him that we're talking about field owners. They're wealthy people. They're not interested in going through their fields to pick up the little stuff that's left over after the Lakutim was Lakutim and the Moshe. They're not interested in being koined.
What about the regular people who are not aliyim? They are interested in trying to
if anybody, if you want, you can go take it because the Bailim were in koined. There are those who learned is me'emas and kol adam doesn't mean any person. Kol adam, all of the property owners. When could the property owners take back those payers? Is what they want to be. Yes, you get. You have to figure out that the cost of fuel and the little bit that's left over after the nemushos, it might not even be a good investment anymore. All the harvesting equipment are solar. Oh, so okay. And as far as I know, the one of the industries hit most by the carbon tax was the farms because they rely heavily on fuel. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. From Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar, Levayer Perish Shvius. Why do I need to know when the second Revi'ah is? Because at that point, you're no longer allowed to retain Perish of Shvius. The Taanis we learned, had Moshe Nehenin, the Sarfin B'Tevin of the Kashal Shvius. So when are you allowed to have a Noah from the produce of Shvius and use straw as fuel? Only until the second rains fall. My time. What's the reason? The Kislev, it says, when are you allowed to use Perish of Shvius? And we dash in the pasuk. As long as there's still crumbs available in the field for chayas to eat, feel free to feed your behemoths this straw in your barn. But if there is no more left of this product for the chayas in the field, then kalei, the verb, you have to also get rid of what you have in the house because it has to be equal to what's out of the field. Amar Rabavo, my lashon Revi'ah. What does the word Revi'ah come from? We're talking about the Revi'ah Rishayna, the Revi'ah Shniya. What is the word Revi'ah? It's davar sheroy v'sakar. It's something that satisfies the land. Kidab Yehuda. Amar Yehuda, Mitra Bala Da'aru. Rain is the ball of the land. What does that mean? Shenemar Kikasher Yered Hageshem Hashelag Nashemayim. This we learn this in the Haftarah of a Taanis Sibur. Kikasher Yered Hageshem Hashelag Nashemayim Vishamal Yoshev Kim Hirves Aretz V'Hailida V'Tzmicha. So you see, it gives the land a koyach. It gives the land a koyach to produce. Okay, Zaktik Vailida Ka'adam Shamayla, Rashi says. Zaktik more about Vamar Ravo. Revi'ah Rishayna is Kadesh Tered Bekarka Tefach. The Revi'ah Rishayna means that it's so deeply penetrated the land that it's already moist 1 tefach deep below the surface of the earth. Shniya, by the time the second rains come, it's muddy already. They log of pichavis. You can use the earth as a paste to seal a barrel. And Rashi says log of pichavis. Sheshayshish min hamayim. There's so much water there. It becomes so fluidy, so soft. You don't even need to add water to this earth. It's moist enough that you can use it as a paste. Once it rained enough that the soil is that muddy, there's no klal anymore. There's no klal of ha'atzar sheshamayim. So now you know for sure that there's no reason to fast. That's enough rain that this year for sure is not a year of klal. Even if you didn't have that much rain, you had less rain than making it so muddy. But the rain rained before we say va'atzar and krishma. So before krishma, and we'll soon see if this means before krishma shall shachris or krishma shall arvis. But if it rained even a little bit before krishma, ein bahem mishum va'atzar, there will not be any atzar. Amar Abaye, what atzar are we talking about? Meaning if it rained even a little bit during the day, before the atzar of the krishma, the shade evening, then we no longer fast, we no longer say that it's a siman klal, it'll always be a siman brach. But if the rain was only at night, before the krishma that we say in the morning, yesh bahem mishum va'atzar, there if you don't have enough rain, it's still considered a klala, and we still have to fast. Amar Yehuda by Yitzchak, Hani anani the safra. These clouds in the morning, these morning clouds, less to mishasha. Rashi of ein shenasa mivareches. They don't bring bracha to the year. Kislev, ma'aseh lach Ephraim. What can I do for your Ephraim? Your Rabbi Shloim says, ma'aseh lach Yehuda. What can I do for Yehuda? V'chastechem. All your mitzvahs that you do are kanan biker. They're useless. They're just like the anan in the morning. So you see, the anan in the morning is useless. And the pasuk continues, you can have all your mitzvahs, but if you don't do tshuva on your abayers, all of your chasadim won't help you. Amar le rapapol abaye. But Amar inchi, don't we know a famous saying that people always say, that the meth tachbavi mitra, if you open up your door in the morning and it rained, bar chamra moich sakich begani. If you're a merchant that sells wheat, you might as well shut down for the season. Because the fact that there's rain in the morning is a siman that it's going to be such a good yield that tefillah will be so inexpensive. And therefore, merchants aren't going to do well. You might as well shut down for the season. So how could you tell me the cloud in the morning, the rain in the morning is not a siman bracha? Everyone says it is a siman bracha. So the word lakasha, ha de kater be iba, ha de kater be adani. It all depends. If it's thick clouds, yes, that would be very, very good. But if it's only just wisps of cloud, that's not a siman bracha. Amar Yehuda, if we just said tavel shata, the teves are malta. It's good for the year to siman bracha if in teves there's no rain. If in teves it's dry. Why is it a good siman if in teves it's dry? Igadamri deloibairi tarvitzi, because there's two pshatim of this. Rashi says igadamri deloibairi tarvitzi. So I'm on the fourth wide line of Rashi. Ocean mekaymais shemarbitim ben Torah einan buras. The places where people sit and learn will not be empty. Why? Because since it's already starting to dry, because in Teves it's not raining, the roads will be travelable and passable, so people will come and travel to the Beis Medrash. If it's dry, the roads will be clear. That's one shot of loy bayri tervitzi. Second shot is lishnachvina loy bayri tervitzi ganois shein gedelam al roiv mayim kagan kashim. There are certain gardens that don't need so much water, and if it rained in Teves, it would damage them. So it's a good year because these gardens that grow karshinim will have a good yield. The Igadamri, there's another shot into why it's good if it's dry in Teves, because there's less chance of flooding. There'll be no flooding. Flooding is not a good thing. Rashi says, "Ein hashidafan nechas u'mizdabek b'tefillah." It won't flood out the tefillah. Any, is that so? Is that so that it's good if Teves is dry? It's good for the year if Teves is a messy month full of mud. If it rained in Cheshvan and it rained in Kislev, so you had enough rain already, well, then it's very good if Tavis is dry. But if it didn't rain in Cheshvan and it didn't rain in Kislev, then of course you needed to rain in Tavis. What if it rained in one part of a Medina, but in another part of Medina it didn't rain? That's not either a klala, because the part of the country that had a lot of rain could supply tefua to the part of the country that doesn't have rain. Ain't is that so? Vaksiv, we learned, and unless the government refuses to build a pipeline, then it's impossible for one side of the country that has resources to supply another side of the country, and it'll have to be shipped in from the Persian Gulf. In fact, tomorrow, I couldn't hold that back. Sorry.
Until there's rains and it breaks the pipeline.
Oh, in fact, tomorrow, is that so that if it rains only in part of the country, that'll be fine? Vaksiv, Hashem is talking about a klala. When it was 3 months away from Tzir, I held back rain. And you know what else I did for a klala? So chelka achas temoter, the pasuk says one side of the country is going to have too much rain. The chelka asher lo yamter le'ativa will dry up. The pasuk continues. So you see, rain in one side of the country is not good. Shtein l'klala. Shtein l'klala means that the side of the country that doesn't get rain is l'klala because it's dry, and the side of the country that gets over rain is also a klala. The devil is in the details. Sure, in that case, it's a klala in both places, because even in the place where it rained too much. But if it rained in one place adequate, then that side of the country will be able to provide sustenance to the other side of the country. Amar Bashi, Dekanami. And actually, the Lashon HaPasuk spells it out. The Chsiv Timater. Timater means Mater, it'll be too rainy, it'll be too much. So the whole problem was only because there was too much rain in one half of the country, but otherwise, the half of the country that got good rain, adequate rain, would be able to sustain the other half of the country. Shema Mina.
That might be all well and good that the people won't starve, but there are probably going to be a lot of farmers that are going to go bankrupt where they didn't have rain. They might lose their houses, they can do this, Like it's not a national, we're not living in Russia where it's all socialist.
So when one side of the country is more successful, more fortunate, it spreads it out. It's called transfer payments. When do you start making a bracha on rain? What's this bracha on rain? We don't make this bracha, but actually the shaila, if there's a shaila in halacha, if the bracha is made in a place where you don't get a lot of rain, a naturally dry place. So the name of the bracha al Shem Rashi per karoy brachas aminon al Shem Aimer atoy v'meitev. And the Gemara asks, you make it. So the Gemara says it depends if it's in a place where you normally get rain or not. So when do you start making this bracha on Shamim? So tomorrow Mishiyetze chason lekras kal. Rashi says when it's raining so much that when it rains, the last drop splashes up to greet the next drop of rain coming down. When the rain is in such abundance, that's when you make the bracha. And everybody asks, Vos epis, the Ben Yayod asks, Vos epis, we're comparing rain, chazon like this kala. So the Ben Yayod answers is that we know that there's kasha zivugan kikris yamsuf and kasha pernasasan shaladam. There's a nasan shalom kikris yamsuf. So these are all the things that are kasha kikris yamsuf. So that's why we keep them bundled together. In the same way, we have to rely on your Rebbeinu Shalom, and we can be beteach that I'll take care of us. And I'll find shidduchim. I'll also find this pranasa, and they'll take care of us. My mevarach. What is the bracha that's made? Amidu marav moedim anachta lecha Hashem alakenu. I'll call tipa betipa sheiradet alonu on every drop that you allowed it to rain. Rabbi Yochanan Messiah ba'achi, and Rabbi Yochanan adds to the bracha. Ilu finu malishir kayam or sheneni rina kamoin galov. Like we say this in nishmas. Ad al yazvunu rachamecha Hashem alakenu. don't abandon us. Azavunu, you didn't abandon us in the past. Baruch Roiv Haidois. You're bench with the Roiv of the praises. Correct Gemara, Roiv Haidois. Like Kol Haidois. When we thank Hashem, we have to thank Him with every praise. Amarava, you're right. Ema Kael Haidois of all the Haidois. Amar Papa, look at Papa. Therefore, Nimrinu L'Tarvayu, we should say both words. Kael Haidois, Vir Roiv Haidois. Why is that? Look, Rashi, top Rashi, Adaf Zayin, and Aleph. Baruch Ata B'Roiv Haidois, meaning the Marbis Haidois, with the multitude, with many, many Haidois, and Hakel shall Kol Haidois Mashma, and the Rebbeinu Shalom has all of the Haidois. Originally, when the Gemara didn't like Roiv Haidois, Zok Rashi, Mitchila Yamashma Roiv Mamish V'Loi Merubas. At the beginning, when we had the Kasha Roiv Haidois, like Kol Haidois, there we interpreted Roiv as most of the Haidois, not many, many Haidois. But now, in the conclusion, when we're saying you say both, we're using Roiv Haidois not to mean Hashem only has most of the Haidois, Avad Hashem has Kol Haidois. But it means there's an abundance of Haidois that Hashem has. Okay, let's stop over here, and the Mitzvah Hashem will be Mamshech tomorrow.
Yeah.
Shleich.
Ech.